So the past week or so has been very interesting. So last week, Roe versus Wade was overturned, and that day I remember I was just focused on work and family, and it wasn't until at night where my husband is like, "Oh, do you know that this has been overturned?" And I was just like in all that my whole day was spent without knowing about it. At night I knew about it, and I looked it up, and just like I was in celebration mode over what that the really gross wrong that was put in the court 50 years ago that was reversed. And this wasn't the first time that the American legal system needed to reverse a wrong. I mean, like before, the Constitution permitted slavery, and so now and then they reverse that wrong, and this is another one of that wrong, those moral wrong that should be reversed. And I'm glad that we're going in the right direction, and I am very respectful of the judges who put their lives out there, their families' lives out there, to correct this wrong, contrary to what a lot of people are like a lot of people like speak out against it. But I know that they did the right thing, and they did the right thing in the sight of God, because they are preserving the sanctity of life. People add a bunch of excuses and reasons to why abortion should be illegal, but the core matter is that it's a moral issue. And I wrote about this to my CEO last night, and it's actually very interesting because I heard about this, and like that last week was a bunch of releases and just a lot of work, and I didn't know it. But then on one of the day, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday or something like that, the Slack channel got kind of reset. There was a glitch in it, where then a channel that I haven't been following appear on my list, like the CEO channel. And in that channel, I saw the CEO of the place I work writing about her sadness and concern that Roe versus Wade was overturned. And so when I read that, it really saddened me, because I thought that the company that I work for is trying to save lives, and yet with this overturn, they're voicing their concern and sorrow, the CEO. And I'm just I don't know what we stand for anymore. And so it really dragged me down, and I have to kind of juggle this kind of depression, a little bit of a depression mode, because I kind of wasn't the company that I thought stood for what I stood for. Now I know that there are many people who are, especially the leaders, who are not on the same page as me. And so it was kind of depressing, but I continued working, and I continued thinking about it. And then I finally felt like I needed to write back. There were a lot of emojis that supported the CEO's message, but there wasn't anything that was saying, no, that's, we have a different opinion. And so I felt like I needed to voice my opinion. And I was scared because if I voiced my opinion, then I would, like, I might get fired, or, you know, or I might cause bad blood, I might cause division. But I was mostly scared about getting fired. And we are, my family is going through a time where we need all the income. Um, and well, we don't need it. Well, we kind of need it. Like, my husband said that we can manage to get by, but I feel like we need it, or else we're gonna struggle financially. And so I then decided to ask my husband, and I was at first kind of like afraid. I was thinking like, he's gonna say no, he's gonna say like, why is this such a big deal to you, like, that, and just work, like, work is work. And I'm not someone who likes to get myself, like, who to respond to political comments. Like, there's a lot of comments about gay pride, LGBTQ, like, pride and rights and stuff floating around. It's a very political place that uh, I work for. Or a lot of politics is being discussed there. I don't even know why people are spending time writing stuff like that. And it was during work hours too. So I'm like, why are you writing this during work hour? But anyways, that's what that's the environment. And so I was thinking my husband would not agree to it, and so I approached it kind of carefully. I um, I voiced my what was going on, and that I wouldn't have known about it if there wasn't that Slack glitch. And and that it's affecting me like a lot mentally and emotionally. And I felt like a really strong urge to write it, especially with the Slack glitch. I felt like it's kind of like a way that God is trying to get my attention on that subject. And so all of that put together, and my personal, like, love for Esther, the phrase in Esther where it says, "For such a time as this," and that during my psychotic episode, I actually wrote down med, like a switch from tech to med, like, and then I got into the company that, like, that made me feel like this company was chosen by God for me to be here. And so all of that combined, especially with the psychotic episode, like, link thing, like, I feel like I was put here for a reason, and maybe this is the reason. And then so I wrote it up. I mean, my husband then said, yeah, he's fine with it. And then he discussed more about it with me, like, that like what he thought about it. And so that was all good. And I'm just like, when I heard his view on it and how he's supportive of me writing it, I was so touched. Like, I was almost in tears because of how grateful I feel towards him. And I know that he is a great guy, but I was still kind of like had my reservation, especially when it comes to like political matters that he wants, like, especially when it comes to like matters like that that consume my thought because of my previous psychotic episode. Like, he might not want me to touch stuff like that. And so, like, I thought that he might be against me doing anything related when it's like consuming my thoughts. So I was kind of afraid, and I was afraid of the finance, but he, like, all of my fear was kind of like unfounded, because when I talked to him, it wasn't like even an issue to him. So that was so awesome and so sweet, and I just want to remember that moment, and how grateful I felt. But then after that, then I continued to work, but then whenever I find time, then I would start drafting the message. Well, actually before that, like, it's everything. It's like I research like quotes that I can use, and then like I research the topic even more, so that I can have, like, I can know how I want to craft it, and like the words just kind of like come to me in bits and pieces, and I kind of know what the message I want to write. And then when I have time, then I kind of jot it down, and organize it. And it just, what was in my head, like floating around, I just kind of put it down on paper. And I kind of had a feeling that's what makes that what's like, inspiration is, and that's what being carried along by the Spirit means. And so I want to remember that part. And when I finish writing it down. Oh, during that kind of like thought process, I actually wanted that. I feel like it's a moral issue, but morality cannot, like, who determine what is morally right? And the human collectively cannot determine what is right and what is wrong. As we've seen through the issue of slavery and this issue, like, humans have limited understanding. Scientific advancement is incremental, and so we don't have all the information we need to make those decisions, moral decisions. And people bring all kind of excuses to, like, support their stand. And so, and I'm a big believer in the phrase universal truth is not measured by mass appeal. Just because a majority says that it's okay doesn't mean it should be okay. It or it's not the truth. And so the truth is measured by God. And the only one who can make a moral judgment is God. And so to craft a message without God's point of view is to just make it a human argument. And if as a human, I'm talking to another human, we both are limited in our understanding. There's nothing to say that someone else's argument is not true and my argument is true. And so my basis, when I thought about that, I'm like, I need to know what God thinks. And so I search up, like, at first I only search up like quotations, and so they're more like from human. And so I wanted to know what the Bible said, like in specific, like what I can use. And so I found this site, and there's just a lot of like quotes. And so I scrolled through it, but then the the important thing is that I scrolled to the end, but I didn't know it was the end, so I just left it because I've been scrolling so much. And so I just left it and I went to sleep. And then the next day when I opened it up, I saw this. And when I saw this, it's just like, it just hit home. It's just like, you have to write this up, and you have to use the word choose life, because it's like important. It's it's what God thinks. It's the heart of God. And God is pro-choice. He wants everyone to have a choice. That's why he gave everyone a choice ever since the beginning of time, of human creation, I meant. And so he gave everyone a choice, and in his eyes, if you're not choosing life, you're choosing death. It's not you're choosing choice, it's you're choosing life or death. Everyone has that choice. And so when I saw this, like, just like in plain sight for me. I didn't even see it before. I didn't even know that it was like the end of that page. And then I it's like I have to include this Bible verse. And then I thought about it more, and I thought about how that it's not a distinction between choice and life, it's between life and death. And I see the heart of God. I see how wise and how concise he is. And I just had to include that in the draft. And then not only that was impressive, the most impressive thing is how it tied back to my psychotic episode. Because in my psychotic episode, the night before my first psychotic episode, I was calling my sister and I was telling her, now it's your turn. And when you need to choose life. I was saying those exact words to her, not knowing that it's applicable to me in the future. And then during the time where my baby boy almost drowned, during the psychotic episode, the day after I said this to my sister, at that time where my baby boy was almost drowning, the voice, the message that snapped me out of that moment was choose life. And when I saw him and I'm like, he's dying, I picked him up and I knew I needed him to live, and God let him live. And it all connects, like all the little bits and pieces, it all connected. And I just felt like this is something I must do. And it's just nuances. Life is full of nuances, and it all ties together to form a conviction. And that's where I am. And I'm just so glad that I sent the message to the CEO last night, and it seems like I won't be fired. She was very respectful about it. So we'll see where this leads, but at least I felt like I did what God wanted me to do in response to that. So I'm like kind of like condensing or like documenting this whole process, especially these nuances that I might not remember in the future, so that I can remember how God worked. Because recently I actually read a quote by Albert Einstein that I think is so awesome. He says that coincidences, it's God's way of remaining anonymous. I think that's what the quote said, or something along that line. But that is like so true. It's like people think of coincidences, but if you have the lens where you see God's hand work, if your worldview is around that, you will see miracles, and you will see God's hand, God's fingerprint through your life, tying little things together, timing, like thoughts, like important words that stand out to you, things like that. And it's just like it it's just so like it's it's such a pity that people don't see that, because when they see that, they can be in awe of it every day, and they can have the assurance that God is working for their good, and that they don't need to worry, they don't need to be in anxiety, and that even if something they do for God might disadvantage them, that everything He is in control and He will work out for their good. And they might go through a trial of fire, a time where it's hard, but knowing that everything will work out in the end is worth doing whatever you can for God. So yeah, I just want to document this.